Good morning, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Velázquez, a proud representative of the 7th Congressional District. And thank you all for being here today. The legislation we are unveiling today takes aim at very serious problems that have become prevalent throughout New York City. In every borough and practically every neighborhood, we are hearing of landlords abusing the Section 8 program, taking steps to aggressively push working people from their homes. We have heard in Ridgewood, Queens, of a landlord intentionally failing to make basic repairs. Some of our most vulnerable neighbors, elderly residents, were forced to contend with mold and rats. In Bushwick, Williamsburg, and Chinatown, we have heard similar stories. In many of these cases, this is a concerted effort and part of a plan to make more money at tenants' expenses. By refusing to fix problems in these units, landlords are essentially ensuring that apartments fail their inspections and are removed from the Section 8 program. Then the landlord can evict voucher holders, convert it to a luxury unit, and rent to wealthier people at much higher rates. With the severe housing shortage we are experiencing, residents may not find another affordable unit in their neighborhood. Let's be clear, these tactics are not a mistake. They are not an oversight. They are a systemic effort to take units contracted in Section 8 eligible, kick them out of the program, and ultimately kick residents out of their homes. This is deliberate, and it must stop. For this reason, my bill, the Landlord Accountability Act, will establish for the first time civil monetary penalties if landlords try to push their units out of Section 8. It has become clear that many of these landlords understand only one thing: money. Well, with this bill, if they try to force tenants from their homes, we are going to hit unscrupulous landlords where it counts, in their pocketbooks. This legislation also includes important components to help tenants exercise their rights. It will establish a new housing complaint program to specifically assist tenants with vouchers. It will make complaints public so that dishonest landlords' records will be in full view. And it will dedicate federal funds to local anti-tenant harassment programs that benefit all renters, not just Section 8 vouchers holders, like Tenant Harassment Prevention Task Force here in New York City. As we will hear today, tenant harassment is not limited just to Section 8 buildings, and my bill provides resources for other renters as well. Equally important, this bill will help end discrimination in the housing market. Section 8 vouchers holders will become a protected class under the Fair Housing Act. You cannot legally discriminate against a potential tenant based on race, religion, or gender. Well, you also should not be allowed to discriminate based on income, and this bill will bring to a halt that practice. My friends, New York City faces a housing crisis. Finding affordable housing is growing more difficult. Unfortunately, in this tight market, there are some bad actors who will game the system and line their pockets by hurting renters. Well, we are here to say with one collective voice, no more.
That's right.
So, en el día de hoy estoy introduciendo legislación en Washington que va a añadir a toda persona que posee un voucher de la sección 8 de que no se va a poder discriminar basado en el hecho de que usted posee un voucher de sección 8. De la misma forma que el gobierno federal prohíbe discriminación en términos de religión y otras prácticas, estamos añadiendo el que si usted posee un bajo ingreso, que los landlords, los dueños de hogares, no van a poder discriminar en contra de usted. Y si usted siente que al buscar un apartamento le fue negado simplemente porque usted tiene sección 8, usted va a poder llamar a una línea, registrar su complaint, su queja, y entonces las agencias pertinentes se encargarán de enviar testers, inspectores, para ir con una sección 8 a ver si ese landlord, ese casero, le niega esa sección 8. Usted es los caseros inescrupulosos pueden recibir hasta una multa de $100,000 y además el inquilino puede recibir compensación hasta $50,000. So, on that note, it gives me tremendous pleasure to introduce someone who has done great work in holding to account landlords that flaunt the rules and break the law. It is my pleasure to introduce Attorney General Eric Schneiderman, who has been a fighter for equal justice for the state of New York, for every New Yorker. And in this case, when it comes to the lack of affordability in terms of the housing market and the fact that the housing market is so hot in New York, he has been at the forefront of protecting the rights of every New Yorker when it comes to access to affordable housing.
Thank you, Representative Velázquez. Muchísimas gracias, nuestro luchador. And thanks to all of the advocates and all of the activists who are here, including the advocates from my office, Lourdes Rosada, and others from my Civil Rights Bureau, who seek to enforce the laws every day. The Landlord Accountability Act of 2016, which we're here today to support, is an extraordinarily important piece of legislation. It is also a quintessentially American piece of legislation. Many people do not realize that in 2016, discrimination against tenants is legal in most of the state of New York and in most of America. This is an ad we took off Craigslist. No Section 8 allowed. Landlords, in the sense that decades and decades ago, they could say no Irish need apply, no blacks, no Jews, can still say we are allowed under the law of this state and this nation to discriminate against tenants if they are trying to use legal housing vouchers, Section 8 vouchers, to pay for their rent. In New York City, we have a boom unlike any other real estate boom we've ever seen. Affordable housing is very, very hard to come by. 30% of renter households pay at least half of their income for rent. That's 50% of their income go for rent. This is totally intolerable. It's beyond any standard that any economist, any national study says is affordable or reasonable for a family. These families are one slip, one financial misstep away from homelessness. The Section 8 voucher program, which is designed to try and deal with this problem, is an important effort by the federal government to help these economically vulnerable families. A voucher allows a family to pay less of their income towards rent with the balance paid by the government. But the catch is that it's on the renter to find an apartment. You get approved for a voucher, then you have to find an apartment. And in a tight rental market, that's challenging enough. But my office has learned that there are landlords out there who aren't satisfied with it being difficult. They want to make it impossible for a low-rent tenant using Section 8 vouchers to find an apartment. We know this discrimination occurs because we've investigated and prosecuted cases of discrimination against Section 8 tenants in different parts of the state. the parts of the state where local law makes it illegal. Some landlords and brokers have told our undercover testers who come in saying, we're Section 8 tenants. The landlords tell them, oh, there's a long waiting list for the apartment. We then send in testers saying, we're not Section 8 tenants, and they're told the apartment is available today. That's illegal in New York City, in Long Island and Westchester and 3 municipalities upstate. And the rest of the state of New York, you're allowed to just say, we don't take Section 8 tenants. That's what this legislation will change for the rest of the state and for the rest of the United States. My office has secured settlements with landlords, with major real estate firms, forcing them to comply with local anti-discrimination laws. But unfortunately, the enforcement is limited to a relatively small part of our state. Congresswoman Velázquez has the vision to get ahead of this problem in the only way that it really can be solved. We have to have a federal enforcement program and federal anti-discrimination rules to back up this federal housing voucher system. So I am proud to be here to support this legislation. It is, as the Congressmember noted, simply taking the fundamental American notion that you cannot discriminate against people and making Section 8 tenants a protected class in the sense that you can't discriminate against tenants based on race or gender or religion. You shouldn't be able to discriminate against them just because they're using this well-tried, proven voucher system with a track record of success. There is no legitimate reason for any landlord to turn away a Section 8 tenant. So let us move ahead today. Let us pass this legislation. The other thing that's very important here is that the legislation provides for grants to local agencies to enforce this law, because it's very tough. If you're a local agency, even where discrimination is illegal, we just don't have the resources to do everything that we should do. This is a comprehensive bill. It will help tenants all across New York State. It will help tenants all across America. It will enable us to preserve the fabric of life in this city, where people of different classes, races, and creeds mix together. That is the essence of New York. That is the embodiment of the spirit of this city. We're losing that. We're losing that. And the good landlords out there who are honoring Section 8 vouchers are at a competitive disadvantage because of the sleazy landlords who will not accept Section 8 vouchers. Let's do right by those landlords. Let's do right by our tenants. Let's do right by the people of the state of New York. And let's honor the spirit of our state and federal constitutions and end this discrimination once and for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to have such a great partner, but most importantly, to be able to provide the resources for you to continue doing the great job that you're doing. And he is so right. This legislation intends to bring balance, because for those who play by the rule, this is an incentive to continue to do that. They will not be put at a disadvantage when other landlords are breaking the law. So let me call on Councilman Carlos Menchaca. He represents part of my district and has been at the forefront of fighting for affordable housing in New York City and protecting tenants' rights.
Thank you. Buenos dias. Buenos dias. My name is Carlos Menchaca. I represent Sunset Park and Red Hook. And we are at the brink of a catastrophe in our neighborhoods. It's no secret that we're going through transformation, but this legislation brings accountability to the people that are causing this gentrification that we're feeling in our neighborhoods. And that's the Landlord Accountability Act of 2016. The only thing I want to say is that every day we get thousands of, not every day, every year we get thousands of people that come into my office. And the top two issues are immigrant legal issues and housing issues. The Congresswoman heard our cry and is now building this very important comprehensive piece of legislation. This is how we work together as a team, the local municipality working with the federal government. We're going to make some big changes in our communities, and we're standing on this together. There are tenant organizers behind us right now, and we want to make sure that we thank them and we give them the resources to attack these harmful and discriminatory landlords. We're here, we're in solidarity, si se puede. Thank you.
Another member. Another member of the City Council, Margaret Chin, who has fought along with me and Tish James, protecting 27 families that were about to be evicted in Chinatown.
Thank you, Lydia. I stand here with my colleagues, with organizers and tenant leaders, to thank you for introducing this Landlord Accountability Act of 2016, federal legislation and resource that can help us fight against harassment, fight against discrimination, and to help us protect the affordable housing in our neighborhood. Every day, tenants are working very hard to make sure that they can stay in the home in the neighborhood that they help to build. And this legislation will give us more tools and ammunition to fight back against those bad landlords in our community. So thank you, Nidia, for taking the leadership.
Thank you. Woo. Thank you. And now let's hear from some of the community-based organizations. One of them is Brooklyn A Legal Services, Shakir Krishnan. He has been provided legal assistance for so many individuals that has been discriminated against.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Good morning, everyone. My name is Shakir Krishnan, and I'm an attorney at Brooklyn Legal Services Corporation A, and we stand here in strong support of Congresswoman Nidia Velázquez's legislation to add a critical, much-needed protection to the Federal Fair Housing Act. Let's make no mistake about it. New York City is one of the most segregated cities in the country. This metropolitan area is one of the most segregated regions in the nation. And source of income discrimination based on Section 8 is one of the top 2 forms of housing discrimination in our city. That and discrimination based on race. And the two far more often overlap than not. This is at a time in our city when affordable housing is scarce, when tenants are severely rent burdened, and landlords are resorting to any tactic, including destroying their own buildings, to get low-income families out as quickly as possible. We at Brooklyn A see the impact of this on the ground on a daily basis, fighting against housing discrimination on behalf of tenants in North Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Bushwick, Greenpoint, East Brooklyn, Cypress Hills, East New York, Brownsville, neighborhoods at the epicenter of gentrification and displacement in our city. And what we see is that Section 8 is often the means that families have to be able to stay in their apartments, in their homes, and in their communities. This legislation ensures that that remains the case for years to come, and that we as advocates now have a powerful tool, one that we did not have before, to continue fighting back and ensuring that the goals of the Fair Housing Act are met. Combating housing discrimination, overcoming residential segregation, and affirmatively furthering fair housing. For if we are, as a society, are to live up to the ideals of Dr. King and the leaders of the civil rights movement who fought so hard back in 1968 to make the Fair Housing Act a reality, this change, 40 years later, is long overdue and much needed. Thank you sincerely to our Congresswoman who has fought so persistently on this issue, calling attention to it and making that change a reality today. Thank you.
Thank you, Shakir. And now let's put a face into this issue. Let's hear from one of the tenants who has been negatively impacted by the landlord, in her case, a Section 8 voucher holder, Zoraida Conde.
Good morning. My name is Zoraida Conde, and I'm a member of Make the Road, New York. I'm a tenant living in the 383 Sumter Street in Brooklyn. I've been a victim of domestic violence with my son with a disability. I qualified for Section 8 voucher several years ago, which helped me a lot. That support was able to make support my son, help me enter in the university and get a decent job. The voucher has meant a lot to me. All through I have an accident that I disabled me. I have not been in the street. First, I was in Richwood, Queen, and then Bush Street, Brooklyn. As our rents go up due to the gentrification, I have to keep moving. Now I live in East New York. Things have changed a lot. I was not always difficult to find a place to live. I live in rent-stabilized apartment. The owner, who have 2 buildings in the same area, fix and renovate only the empty apartment so that he can rent them to people of other economic levels, rather than tenants living with Section 8. He never intentionally does not repair apartment with Section 8 tenants. So the apartment wasn't packed inspection and Section 8 doesn't renew the voucher. I have been in court for more than 2 years to demand to repair. Section 8 told the landlord they call when the repairs are complete. My voucher right now is inactive because it's no reparations. That means I cannot move now from my apartment. I have to stay where everything is messed up. Okay, I searched for an apartment in Brooklyn because I live all my life in Brooklyn, but I've been forced to search in the Bronx. Nobody wants to rent Section 8, and even internet page say we do not accept Section 8. The government must be careful in delivering in Section 8 vouchers so they do not go to the hands of people who don't need them. This will avoid fraud. I also ask the government to support this bill which protects Section 8 tenants from landlords to discriminate and ensure access to decent housing is a human right. It's especially important in an expensive city like New York because this is our home. We are here and we stay.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to hear from Lucy Newman from the Legal Aid Society.
Hi. I'd like to thank Congresswoman Velázquez for the introduction of this bill, and I'm here from the Legal Aid Society to offer our support for this important piece of legislation. As we all know, New York City is experiencing an affordable housing crisis. We also are dealing with a huge homelessness crisis nationwide. With public housing suffering from years of chronic underfunding, Section 8 vouchers are a precious resource for low-income individuals and families to rent a safe and affordable home. At the Legal Aid Society, we see daily the struggle that low-income and vulnerable families face in order to obtain and maintain their homes. Sadly, all too often at Legal Aid, we see our clients literally having the door slammed in their faces when they tell landlords and agents that they are going to be paying rent with the assistance of a Section 8 voucher. This, even though in New York City, our human rights law makes it unlawful to discriminate on the basis of source of income. Not only do our clients face discriminatory housing practices that limit their choices in renting apartments, but in recent years, with rapid gentrification in certain parts of our city, and with it, rising rents, we've seen long-term Section 8 tenants dealing with actions by their landlords that are designed to force them out of their homes. Unscrupulous landlords are cutting off essential services, refusing to make necessary repairs, and leaving tenants living in substandard and dangerous conditions in order to try and force them from their homes. The Legal Aid Society supports the introduction of the Landlord Accountability Act of 2016 and thanks Congresswoman Velázquez for her tireless efforts to protect the homes of her constituents and for low-income households throughout the nation. This bill will provide additional tools for low-income individuals to access and stay in their homes. Households should not be forced to choose between staying in an apartment that is dangerous and substandard or leaving to protect the health and safety of their families and thereby risking homelessness. The Landlord Accountability Act will make sure that landlords are held accountable for these unlawful acts. This bill will help to make sure that housing choices are not limited by discriminatory practices, thereby furthering the goals of the Fair Housing Act, and will help ensure that the mission of the Section 8 program can be fulfilled. We would like to thank the Congresswoman, and we will do everything we can to make sure that this happens.
Thank you. Thank you. Carrie, yeah, we're going to hear from Carrie White, Urban Homesteading Assistant Board.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Carrie White. I'm the Director of Organizing and Policy at the Urban Homesteading Assistance Board. I can't tell you how many times I've walked into a Section 8 voucher apartment and have seen deplorable conditions. Parents who are living with their children with leaks, mold, rats, roaches, and other insects, and they feel like they have no recourse. Because frankly, the only recourse when a building fails its HQS or an apartment fails its HQS inspection is that then the tenant has to try to seek a transfer voucher and try to move in a small window of time. And if they don't find another apartment, they might lose their housing assistance permanently. So this really is a position of tenants who are living with their children in buildings without heat or hot water and have no choice but to either stay in those apartments or try to leave and might have to move into a homeless shelter because they lose their Section 8 voucher. And frankly, up until now, there's been no recourse to these landlords who have accepted government money. Like, let's not forget what the Section 8 voucher does. It pays landlords who are agreeing to the government and agreeing to that tenant that they are going to maintain that apartment in decent and good condition. They've made that promise, they accepted that money, and then when they didn't fulfill their promise, only the tenants suffer. So I really applaud this piece of legislation because it's finally trying to hold these landlords accountable, which is really what we need. And this multifamily complaint line, we need to track landlords who are doing this because these landlords are not doing this just once. They're doing this multiple times. These are chronic bad actors, and we need to document that so we can finally hold them accountable and really give tenants the justice they need. Let's just remember that the Section 8 program is a program that exists to help low-income families have safe and decent housing. It's not a program that goes to line landlords' pockets while they refuse repairs or for landlords to decide it's more economically beneficial for them to force low-income tenants out so they can rent to higher-income people. I really want to thank everyone standing here today. Council members Menchaca and Chin, you've been fighting for your neighborhoods. I know you're long supporters of affordable housing. Attorney General Eric Schneiderman has taken unprecedented stance against landlords who harass tenants, and we're really pushing new bounds to stop harassment in our city. And finally, Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, this bill is really the first step that we have to fight this problem and to really hold landlords accountable across this city and across this country. And I really applaud your work in that effort.
Thank you, Carrie. Last but not least, we have Katie Goldstein from Tenants and Neighbors.
So thank you all for being here. I wanted to thank so much Congresswoman Velázquez for introducing this important legislation. Tenants and Neighbors and also the National Alliance of HUD Tenants, there's a national tenant union, is strongly in support of this legislation. And just to say that Congresswoman Velázquez has been such a wonderful supporter for tenants all during her time in Congress. And what we need, I don't want to repeat everything that people have said up here, but I want to say that every single day we have tenants coming into our office who are discriminated against, who are trying to find recourse against their landlord, who are fighting to be able to stay in their homes and their communities. And what we need is to make sure to hold landlords accountable for bad practices, to make sure that tenants are able to stay in their home, that their homes are safe, that their homes are habitable, and they're able to be a part of their neighborhood. So I want to thank the Congresswoman so much for this legislation, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Any questions? Well, you know, first, the important aspect of this is to send a strong message that landlords will be held accountable, that there are going to be civil penalties, and that is a violation of federal law. And so we are going to have a website and a program set up at HUD where tenants will raise complaints or will file complaints, and then the inspectors of HUD or any other agency will go and warn the landlords. This is not, and then if we could prove that the repairs are not made, and like one of the speakers said, that when vacant apartments are being repaired and yet those that are occupied have not been repaired, there will be a recourse for legal action. Any other question? Yes. Yes. Well, this bill called for $25 million, and that will be a first installment. And I guess that when we can prove with the metrics that this is successful, then we will go back the next year to increase appropriation for the program. Well, it's a competitive process from NYCHA to HPD to the state attorney general, all of those who are involved in making sure that Section 8 vouchers rights are protected. Any other question? Yes. So, question related to Section 8 vouchers. If not, thank you very much.
Gracias.
Yes.
Excellent. Great turnout. Good job.